Hello everybody, it's Kim from Fleece and Harmony. Thanks for joining me for the knitting podcast, recorded here in our shop, in our woolen mill, on our sheep farm in Belfast, Prince Edward Island. I hope everybody is doing great today. Welcome to anybody that's new and this is maybe your first time watching. And for everybody else that's joined us in the past, then thanks for coming back again today. So you're looking at this on October 1st, if you're looking at it on the day that it is published. As always, I'm recording a couple days earlier. It's episode 81. It's hard to believe, 81. It's amazing. And we're going to have the regular lineup today. We're going to talk about a farm update, which is really about a house reno update. And I have an FO, which I'm going to talk about a little bit more. I have a whip and no rips this time. So we have a couple whips that I'm going to show. Shop update as always. And then we're going to do a little fiber festival update, and there'll be an in the mill section. And this is on dyeing yarn this time. So we're going to go back into the dye room. And we'll have the harmony part at the end, and I'll just do a little explanation before we actually start the recording that we did for the harmony part. So without further ado, we'll get started on the farm update. So we have moved just this morning the sheep into kind of their winter paddock, I guess is what we call it. So they haven't eaten there all summer because they've been out in a huge big field that we have that's like around the shop. And so they've pretty well chewed that down to what's there's not much left, let's put it that way. And so we moved them to where we keep them in the winter, so they have access to the barn. We just leave, they're outside most of the time, but they do have access to the barn if if their weather is really bad, and they just come and go as they please. We leave the doors open so they can just come and go, and they have quite a large field to roam around in. And they haven't eaten there all summer, so the grass is really high, and well, there's a lot of clover in it too, so they love clover, so they're chewing and munching away all day today. So they're pretty content where they are, and it's funny, they just seem to know where they're going. That kind of, I guess, the changing of the season, and they know kind of what the routine is, so they just went right over there, and within 5 minutes it was like that's where they'd been all summer. So it's great. They're all set for the winter now. And the other thing that's happening on the farm is, for those of you that don't know, we live in a 160-year-old farmhouse. And it's had a little bit of work done to it in the past, but not that much, so it's pretty much original. And we're now being forced to start doing some work on it because we had a leak in the roof. We had this wild windstorm and rainstorm, and the rain was coming from a different direction than it normally comes and was just pelting the house like crazy. And we discovered that there was a leak over one of the windows. So we knew that there might have been something going on there because the house has some of the plaster has been replaced with gyprock, but there's still a lot of the original plaster that is starting to crack, actually, which is kind of understandable with a 160-year-old house. And so we knew that there was some water getting in because we could see that there was dampness on the, I guess it would be like the skim coat on the plaster was starting to lift a little bit in some places. And with this crazy windstorm that we actually had a leak right in our living room. So we had to do a little bit of work on that. So luckily we have a guy, Big J, who's did the work. So he was awesome. And we're just finishing up on that. But of course, it's your heart always stops when you have to pull something down in an old house, because you don't want to even know probably what's in behind some of these old walls and stuff. But we were pretty lucky. It was very isolated and easy to get to. There's flat roofs over some of the windows that are on the house, which flat roofs are a nightmare. especially in damp and rainy, where it's raining a lot. And so that's where it was. The water was settling on one of the flat roofs, so he had to reshingle it actually. So it's just a small project. It was very isolated, so it really is 2 days, and it was all torn out and then redone. So that's a bit of excitement that we didn't expect for the farm. So the house needs quite a lot of work, and we just haven't really decided what we want to do with it and everything. So we're just getting to the point where we're really starting to think about what has to be done. But this nature called the shots on this particular little repair. We had to do we had to do it right away, because we probably will get more rain, and certainly when the snow starts here in the fall, it starts, but it's quite wet, and it'll rain one day and snow the next day. So all of the snow would be sitting on the top of that roof, and we were probably just going to ask for trouble if we didn't handle that right away. So that's been done, and he just has to come and smooth the mud on the gyprock, because of course it was replaced with gyprock because we're not going to plaster again. And then we'll have a little bit of painting to do, and we'll be set for winter, hopefully. We also had our wood delivered. So we have a wood burning furnace in our house, and we have a big wood lot, about 22 acres, I guess, of wood. So we had wood delivered. We don't cut it, the wood, ourselves. Another guy cuts it, and we had some wood from our own wood lot a couple years ago, but now we're managing the wood lot, I would say. So he had cut wood from part of the wood that was overgrown and everything, so that it's to regenerate the wood lot. So he brought us wood now from another wood lot close by. So we have lots of hardwood to burn in our furnace, and we also have wood stoves in the house as well. So we use the wood stove and the wood furnace to heat most of the time. We don't use a lot of oil. Like a tank of oil lasts us 2.5 years or so, because we really just use the oil if we just need a quick shot. So that's pretty good. We love it when the wood arrives, because it means that we're going to be cozy in the winter, as long as the wind's not blowing too hard through the cracks in the poorly insulated 160-year-old farmhouse, which makes it great for sweaters, because you have to wear sweaters all the time. So that's about all that's happened on the farm. The sheep are in their new place for the winter, and we've got a new roof over one of the flat roofs over a window, and we've started our house renovations before we thought we would have to, but it's all good. And we were really lucky, because when he opened up the old plaster, it could have been a lot worse, obviously, but it was not too bad. It was very clear where the leak was and very isolated. So it was kind of a quick fix, and I'm very thankful for that. So I think we can just talk about an FO now. First time in a while that it's my own FO, and it's my Evendoon sweater is finished, and literally it was just finished this morning, because I sewed in all the ends this morning, so it's not even blocked. I didn't dare block it, because I didn't think that it would probably not have been dry to put on for recording. So it's not blocked, so it's not exactly, you can still see kind of the little bumps that all come out when you block something. So I'm looking forward to doing that. I'll probably soak it first thing tomorrow morning and pin it out to dry. So the last episode, if you watched the last episode, I had a bit of a problem, because I had run out of the Selkirk worsted in watermelon, which is the color of these reddish pink stripes. So this is how much yarn I had left. And I had left a cliffhanger in the last episode, because I wasn't sure what I was going to do, because I had one more stripe to do of this color on the right hand, or the right arm, the sleeve. And I obviously could have gotten more yarn and finished it with the red stripe, but I decided I would try to be creative, because if that happens to you guys when you're knitting, there's there's usually something that you can do if you have a little bit of a stash, or if you need to be a little bit creative in how you can fix it. And when, in this case, there's 6 different colors in the sweater, so I was trying to decide. I couldn't just replace the stripe with a full another stripe of a color that I was already using, because it would have been very obvious that the sequence was completely different. So I was going to try a couple things, and then if I didn't like it, I was going to give in and get another skein of the watermelon and Selkirk worsted. But literally, I would have needed probably 5 yards out of that skein, and if I was a customer, I'm not sure that I would want to do that unless I had some other project in mind to knit with the watermelon. So I decided to come up with a solution that that I thought would be cute. So I don't know if you can really see my arms very well. Well, before I'm talking, before it. So the sleeves look like this. So from the elbow, it starts with the light purple, which is the lady slipper, autumn birch, amethyst brooch, watermelon, and seafoam. And this was the stripe that I was missing. So what I did was this. I put a little stripe, a 2-row stripe of each of the colors. So I had 4 colors left because there's 5 different colored stripes, and neutral, or natural, which is the white in between. So I just made these little stripes. So it looks intentional because it's not just like half done. It's definitely in sequence of how the other stripes go, but the red stripe is missing. So we did a little survey in the mill when I finished it, because I was fully prepared to take it out and get the watermelon yarn and redo it, but kind of was unanimous that it looked kind of cute. So I'm leaving it. So that was the fix. That was the fix for the stripe. I'll take a picture of it so you can see it a bit closer. Then I did the cuffs in the autumn birch. So this is how much yarn I had left. I don't know how, it's probably, I don't know, 5 yards or something like that. So that was cutting that pretty close. I had this much of the white. So this is all from each. I had 1 skein of Selkirk worsted in each of the colors. I had this much of the white left, and I did all the stripes that I was supposed to do. So that's pretty awesome. And then the colors, I don't have my autumn birch, my amethyst brooch left, but I had about this much left of the amethyst brooch as well, and I had quite a lot of the lady slipper, and I had the seafoam. So my intention was to also do the neck in the watermelon, but obviously that was out. And seafoam is a beautiful color, but for me, like next to my face, it's not really the best color for me. So I was hesitating using this for the neck, but I didn't really have a choice, because the when I did the lady slipper here for the the collar, or the neckline, it didn't look good. So it should look perfect next to the amethyst brooch, but when it got down here to next to the seafoam, it was not contrasting enough. The color is obviously very different, but the 2 colors side by side didn't play very well. So I ended up doing the seafoam for the neckline, and then it's exactly the way that Kate Davies has done it in her pattern, that whatever the neckline color is, it came into that exact same stripe where the seafoam was, and that's what she did. She did the color, it happened to be like a seafoamy color on her sweater as well. So she did the neckline, and then it melded into that stripe on the front. So it looks exactly like the pattern. So it looks like it was planned that way. Not what I had intended, but I had most of the neckline knit, and I realized I didn't really like the color combination the way that it was. So I changed my mind, and I did the seafoam, and it looks great. I'm perfectly happy with it. So I have to admit about something that happened while I was finishing my sweater. Something that it's pretty unbelievable, because you think that you're you can do more than one thing at once, and that you're paying attention to what you're doing. And even if you're watching TV or whatever, that you may be, you know, perfectly capable of watching TV and knitting something as simple as a cuff all in one color. But the weirdest thing happened to me. I started knitting the cuff, and I was going along, and it was going pretty quick, and it just didn't look the same as the other cuff. So because I had it on a circular needle that was a little bit, it stretched the fabric quite a bit, I kept thinking to myself, is it because the needle cord is in there that it's not looking right? It looked kind of sloppy, and my tension is usually, I'm not over tight, but it's definitely not loose, my tension. And it just kind of looks sloppy and not as neat as the cuff on the left arm that I had already done. And I couldn't figure out for the life of me what was wrong. I double checked the needle size that I was using, and it was right. And I got the cuff, I bound off the cuff, and I still had the yarn attached. And I thought, I just don't like the look of it. So I put the two cuffs together, and I realized that I had done a 1x1 rib when it's supposed to be a 2x2 rib. I couldn't believe it. I must have looked at it 100 times because I wasn't liking the way that it looked. And I never clued in to the fact that I was doing a 1x1 rib instead of a 2x2. It was absolutely such a ridiculous mistake to make. I couldn't believe it, but I guess that happens. And I was watching TV while I was doing it. So it's just a good example of, you think you're looking at something and understanding what you're looking at, but you're not looking at it really. You're just kind of glancing at it, I guess. And it was weird because I couldn't understand what happened to my tension, why my tension was so bad. And of course, when you're doing that, a 1x1 rib, the knit stitches do come out like a slightly looser, for me anyway, is what I found. And it just looked like I had the wrong needle size, but I knew for sure that I had the right needle size. So I had to rip all of that out. The cuff, I was done, so I had to rip it all the way back again and re-knit it with the 2x2 rib, and it's perfectly fine. So I just never saw it until I literally had the loop pulled out from the needle. I didn't break the yarn, thank goodness. So I just simply ripped it out, and it took me, 45 minutes to fix it, but it was just so dumb. I couldn't believe it, but I guess we all do that kind of thing from one time or another. So that was the story of everything was going so smoothly until the end of this project, when I started running out of yarn and then doing crazy mistakes like that. But anyway, I'm really pleased with it. I'll take a full shot so you can see what it looks like when it's standing up. But it needs to be smoothed out a little bit because I haven't blocked it, like I said. So that's a finished object of my own. So it's been quite a few weeks since I had a finished object of my own. And usually we do the works in progress first, but I save those to after the finished object because it kind of melds into the shop update as well when I'm going to talk about that. So the good news is that Paisley is back. So now that I've finished this sweater, I have dug Paisley out. Again, for the sake of people that maybe this is the first time that they've watched this podcast, I'm just going to show you. This is Paisley Kofta from Sidsel Hoivik, and it's a beautiful jacket knit with her Norwegian wool. And I was almost finished the project when I started the Evendoon, and then I just felt like I wanted a relaxing knit, and the Evendoon was supposed to be that relaxing knit. So I have the first sleeve. The first sleeve is done, and so that's all finished. And this is the jacket itself. So again, for the benefit of people that might not have seen this already, it's steeked in the front, and the steeks are not cut yet, and the sleeves are also steeked. So I think you can see that's steeking there. So this will just be cut from this little hole down here at the bottom all the way up. and I haven't done any of the cutting yet, so I'm going to save that for the end. I can actually hardly wait. I thought I would be nervous, but now I've watched so many people steeking their sweaters that I'm not nervous, and this wool is perfect for that. It's like a nice woolly wool from Norway, so it's just lovely. And the back is this checkerboard pattern of the jacket, and I know this fits, well, I'm assuming it fits perfectly. Obviously I can't put my arms in the sleeve, but I have kind of pulled it down a little bit, and I kind of moved it around on me, and I'm sure that the measurements are right because I measured 100 times while I was doing it. So the last thing I have to do is the other sleeve, and I have it here. So I already have the color work and the cuff done. So now there's a lot of just I'm going to grab my ball of yarn here because it's stuck in the bottom of my, there we go. There's a lot of ends in the color work part because it's a pretty, I'll show a picture. I took a picture in the summer of when I did the other cuff, so I'll insert that picture, but you can kind of see what it looks like here. So I'm right to the point where I have to start the checkerboard pattern, and I've started it twice because I didn't like the way the pattern goes around, because there's a lot of decreases that have to happen, and you start in the middle of the chart. So I didn't start at the right point the first time I did it, so I started it over again. So I've done I mean, I did 2 rows. It's not like it was a big rip out that I had to do. It's just I just want to make sure that I'm starting in the right part of the chart. So that has come out of hibernation and will be started on again. And I'm really excited to get this done. The sleeves don't take that long because it's just, you don't even, I mean, the pattern is just repetitive all the way up. So this shouldn't take me too long to do. And the other thing that I've been working on is, we mentioned in the last podcast, I think, that we have the new Felted Tweed colors in from Rowan. So it's Felted Tweed Colour, and it's a variegated yarn. It's kind of hard to see on the ball what it looks like, but it's, I don't know if you can really even see that. So this one is blue and purple tones, and it's such a long repeat that it's really hard to see. So that's one of the colors, and this is another one. So it's quite a gentle color transition. This one is called Ripe, and it's kind of got oranges, and then it goes into like a cherry red. So those are 2 of them, but we weren't really happy in the shop about how you can tell what it's going to look like when it's knit. So we, Jennifer Hicks, Janet, who works with us, and myself, we all took a couple balls of the Felted Tweed Colour, and we decided to knit gigantic swatches out of 1 ball. So I'm going to show you what they look like. So I still have, they've all done theirs. Jennifer and Janet actually finished theirs. I haven't finished mine yet. Of course, I'm the slow one. So what we're knitting is a straight stockinette cowl, or dicky, I guess, because it's not a loopy cowl. It'll just fit over your neck. And it's just a very simple pattern. It's 120 stitches cast on. I'm using a 3.75 millimeter needle, and I decided to do just four rows of a seed stitch after the cast on, and I'll end it with 4 rows of seed stitch. And I'm knitting this one in the Amethyst color. So you can see it goes from blue up until to a dark green, and then it's going to end on blue, because I can see the end of the ball inside is blue, so it's going to end again on blue. So you're going to have that that graduation of the color. But I'm going to show you the other ones that have been completed, and I'll tell you what number they are, and if I can read the name on the, yes, I think I can read the name. So the first one is number 21. I just have these little hooks on them because we have them hanging next to the yarn in the shop. So this one is called Blush, and it goes from a pink through a bluish gray, and then, or a gray blue, and up to kind of a rosy color. So that's the 21 blush. Then we have magenta, which is number 23. I'm knitting the orangey one that I held up is number 22. This orangey pink one, that's called Ripe. Then 23 is magenta. And this one was knit by Janet, and she decided to experiment a little bit with 120 stitches. Then she did 115 stitches, and I think this one is 115 stitches around. It's just a stockinette tube, like it's couldn't be simpler. And I'll even throw this on just so you can see. It's just they're really, oh, it smells good. We are using Eucalyptus Rapture, or it's now called Jasmine. Hopefully that didn't go on the microphone too much, but they're really, really cute. And there is enough that you can pull it up over your hair like that, but you'd have to have something around the back of your neck because it's not long enough to really cover the back of your neck when you put it up like a hood. But it was really just a swatch. So, okay, so that's magenta. Then the next one is chestnut, which is number 24. There you go. You can see that goes to dark, from dark purplies down through a brown to a kind of a rusty orangey color. Gorgeous for fall. And the next one is, this was another one that Janet did, and she was down to 110 stitches for this one. It's number 25, and the color is Frost. So you have kind of an icy blue going into a purple. And the next one is called Succulent. This one was done by, I don't know if this one was Jennifer Hicks or Janet, I'm not sure. But it's blues and greens together, so it's kind of a cool combination. So you can see the repeat is really long. And the last one is Chartreuse. So this is number 28. And it's really, really subtle. It's just a different variations of green. And this one also has the seed stitch ends on it. So it's that one. So it's great. So there's a book of patterns that goes with this called Felted Tweed Colors, the Felted Tweed Color collection. And we do have that in stock. I'll show a picture. I didn't bring all the books over with me this time. I'll just show pictures of them. So we have that in stock. And there's patterns in there for accessories. And also there's a really cute little cardigan that's made from the Amethyst, which is the one that I'm doing with these greens and blues. So the blue comes across in a big stripe in the middle. It's really, really cute. Simple patterns because they're really highlighting the qualities of the yarn. So that's the Felted Tweed Color. So if you want to make one of these little dickies, it's like I said, you cast on 120 stitches or less if you want. Janet went down, as I said, to 110 in her samples. And I wouldn't go lower than that because then that makes it fairly, it's not tight by any means, but you wouldn't really want it any tighter than that for what you're doing. And you just knit, stockinette in the round all the way until you have enough to bind off, and then you bind off and that's it. And you have a beautiful, this beautiful little cowl to put in your coat when the weather gets cooler. So that's it. So Felted Tweed Color. So, that we're going to go right into the shop update because that was kind of the first item for the shop update. I am going to show you another slideshow from Magazine 70. The last time we were here, I had talked about some homeware that was knit. The patterns are all by Martin Story, I think. And there's some cushions and things, throws that are in that collection. So I'm going to show the homeware collection. So this is, if you haven't had a Rowan magazine before, they divide the magazines. Each issue is divided up into usually 3 stories. So the first story in Magazine 70 is Platinum, which we've shown the patterns from Platinum. So we've seen all of those patterns from episode, the first one we showed was 78. In 78 I showed some, and then there's more in episode 80. So those are all done. And now I'm going to show you the homeware, the knitted homeware collection that Martin Story did. And then there's one more story in the book which is called Vivid. by Georgia Farrell. So I'll show that in the next episode. Like I said before in the last episode, there's 47 patterns in that magazine. So it's really chocked full of all kinds of great projects, and we couldn't show them all at once. So without further ado, we'll go to the slideshow showing the Martin Story section homeware from Rowan Magazine 70. Wow, it's just cute. And that little eye, that blinking eye is fantastic. And it's just a really, really cute collection with the reindeer and then the blinking eye. And there's lots of fun little projects in that slideshow. So I hope you enjoyed that. Now, I do have a shop update on books. So I ordered Knitting Comfortably by Carson Demare, and I did get those books in, and they sold out right away. So they're no longer in stock. So in 1 week they sold out. So I just ordered more, and they're on their way. So I am going to put them back in inventory. And but you may, if you do order it, then you may have to wait a little bit until it comes in. I should probably have it by the middle of next week. But those books, it makes a great gift too for a knitter if you know another knitter, or a gift to yourself. And for those that aren't familiar with that book, it's a book about all of the ergonomics of knitting. So he covers everything. It's like a textbook almost, because it's very precise, and you know, there's no knitting patterns in it or anything. It's just about how you sit while you're knitting, that you shouldn't cross your legs, like all of those kind of hints, and what is happening with your hands and your arms if you're having any aches and pains. Talks about your neck, talks about your hips. So it's just a great resource if you're having any issues. And since we're coming up to Christmas knitting season, who doesn't have issues starting to happen at this time of year when we're knitting our projects that we want for ourselves, and then knitting furiously for everybody that's on the knit list. And so this is just a really good resource to have. That he gives little exercises and everything, and it's just a really great book to have. So those will be back in stock. In the last episode, I also talked about the fact that I wanted to explore a little bit more about crochet. So thanks to some of the viewers, I got some really good comments about different resources for crochet. And somebody suggested that I look at the Morit magazine. So I actually ordered those. So they're coming. I ordered them today. So by the time they ship, I'm not exactly sure when they'll be back in stock. I won't put them in inventory until I get a notification that they've been shipped for sure. And then I will put them in stock. But you may, if you order it when they come in, I'll send it in the newsletter probably the next newsletter, I'll have an update. So I will send information about them in the next newsletter. If you haven't subscribed to our newsletter, the way that our newsletter works, there's a space to subscribe if you on the landing page for our website. So the home page, down in the bottom right hand corner, there's a place to subscribe to the newsletter. You hear about the podcast in the newsletter, but also I'm doing it on the weeks that we don't have a podcast. And the weeks that we don't have a podcast, I'm always featuring something new that the people that subscribe to the newsletter get the link first to order anything that I'm talking about new. So if you don't subscribe, you have to wait until you watch the YouTube episode to see the new things, and sometimes the new things sell out from the newsletter, so I don't even show them on the podcast. So for example, we had advent calendars with the most beautiful stitch markers from Firefly Notes. We had them last year, and I got an order this year, and I featured them on the newsletter last week, and they sold out from the newsletter. So there are benefits of subscribing to the newsletter. So if you haven't done that and you think you might be interested in receiving it, then I suggest that you would sign up from our website. So the advent calendars are sold out. So the other thing that's coming, and I talked about this in the last newsletter as well, but I haven't enough to talk about it here, is I have ordered blue stockings. So that's Kate Davies' new book. So that's on its way here. It's just a great concept. So if you're not familiar what her concept is for blue stockings, it's actually a collaboration with Nicole Poole. I hope I'm pronouncing her last name right. And I believe that Nicole has done a lot of research on 18th century, an 18th century association called the Blue Stockings, and it was a group of women and some men. So they were very inclusive. So they wanted everybody to be able to come that wanted to come. And there were a couple men that had joined as well, but it was mostly a women's group, and they were knitting and doing other things. And it seems like there's probably a lot more to it. I haven't read the book because it's not out yet, or not been sent yet. But there's a ton of research and some essays about the Blue Stocking Club or association, and then there's 8 patterns in the book. There is 7 patterns for different socks. So there's low socks, and then there's a higher socks, which they're calling stockings, and there's also a pattern for a shawl. And like all of Kate Davies' books, when you get the book, you also get a digital download code that you can use once to get a digital download of the book. So I have ordered those. They're on their way, and you can pre-order them now on the website. And if you order something else at the same time as you order the Blue Stockings book, then you will just ship your order all at once. So you won't have to wait long. They're really super fast from Kate Davies Design. So I'm sure that they're going to be here within a week or so. So you can pre-order that book. And we have a yarn as well. So this was also featured in the last newsletter, but we can make as much as we want. It's a limited yarn, but we've made it available until October 31st. So it's called Haunted Wood, and I'm going to just show it to you, and I'll take a close-up picture. And it's a variegated yarn. It's quite dark. We do a veil technique over this with a black. And it's reminiscent of bramble or fiddlehead, but it's not the same. It's it's a darker yarn than either one of those, but it has this beautiful splash of really like russety orange to celebrate the fact that the leaves are starting to turn in the woods, and deep purples and deep mossy greens in it. So it's just a gorgeous color. And the name is really interesting because you think that it's just because of Halloween coming, but it has nothing to do with Halloween, actually. There's a trail called the Haunted Wood Trail that you get access to right from the Anna Green Gables complex at that park in Cavendish. And it's a beautiful walking trail that goes through a gentle wood, I would say, because it's kind of like spaced out. It's not like a deep, dense woods. And there's little wooden bridges over streams and stopping places that you can stop. And it's called the Haunted Wood Trail. So this yarn is celebrating that trail, and it's available because it's we make it here, obviously, so we can make as much as we want, but we're going to have it available until October 31st, and then after that it'll be it's a limited edition, so it won't be available anymore. So just one more look so you can see it. Okay, so you can order that now as well, so that's available. And I think that is, oh, one more thing is this is for your Christmas list. We had been out of stock of the Swift. Again, these Swifts are made from beautiful birch and maple wood and made by Fox Mountain Spindles. So Scott from Fox Mountain makes these, and we have these in stock. We try to keep them in stock all the time, but they usually don't last very long. And this Swift is fully adjustable, and it's very easy to put together and to take apart, but I've showed this on the podcast a few times, but in case you're new, I am going to do a separate tutorial on how to put it together and take it apart. So this is the Swift part. Is like extremely smooth action, which makes it beautiful. The woodworking is absolutely beautiful as well. And he just does I don't know what kind of a finish it's on it, but it's very smooth and just lovely. So I will show that. All of these pins are adjustable to different sizes, so depending on what size skein that you have. And then you can take off the Swift part and you can build yourself a yarn buddy. It comes with it. And the yarn buddy looks like this. So this is, you put your ball of yarn or your cake on here. This one has been untwisted and twisted up again numerous times. So the ball is a mess because I'm always demonstrating it in the store. And you have the top that keeps your yarn in place. And you have a stick here that comes off. So this is a separate, you can buy the yarn buddies separate, and when you buy the yarn buddies separately, the stick that's in the middle is glued on. When you put together your yarn buddy from your Swift, the stick screws off, but the base is the same. So this is the same base that's on the Swift. So if you just want the yarn buddy for your to feed your ball of yarn, you can just buy that separately. And if you want the Swift and the yarn buddy, then those two things come together. So those are both in stock, actually. So I'll put that back on there after, because it's going to be a big mess. So those are back in stock. So if you want to create a Christmas list, then that's a good item to have, or for yourself. It just makes your life so much easier when you can have that. So I'm not going to show the video of how to put it together again now. I'll just do it as a separate video, and that will be in the tutorial section on the YouTube channel if you want to see that. So the last thing that I put it in the shop update, but it's actually not something that we're selling here, but there's always lots of questions. In fact, I answered an email just today about how yarns look when they're knit up, if I have swatches or samples of them. So for example, if you're buying a variegated yarn like the Haunted Wood, what is it going to look like when it is knit up? And I subscribed to the Modern Daily Knitting newsletter, and there was just this great article, which I'm going to put a link in the show notes to, that Jillian Moreno wrote about what is the yarn going to look like when you knit it. And she goes through all the different types of yarns that you can get that are variegated. So she shows what a speckled yarn looks like when it's knit up. She shows a yarn with solid variegation like this, so that there's no white space whatsoever in the yarn. Also one that has white space in the yarn but bigger swatches of color. And she did the knitting on the swatches, and I just thought the article was so great. It gives you a better idea of what you can expect when you purchase a yarn like that if there's not a sample in the store. We have some samples in the store, but not everybody, half of the people that shop for our yarns are not in the store anymore, you're online. So it just gives you a good, she just did such a great job writing this article that I thought it was really worth it just to put it in the show notes. So you'll see a link to that article over on Modern Daily Knitting about that. So that should help you to visualize how your yarns are going to look. And if you have speckles in your stash and different variegations in your stash, you'll be able to figure out sort of how it's going to look. And you just untwist the yarn and you can see the type of variegation that there is. And she gives an example of most of the different types that you might find. So I'll put that there for you. So I just want to talk a little bit about Woolstock East, which was last weekend. It was September 17th and 18th. I attended that festival on the 17th. And I just want to give a shout out to Faith Drinnen from Sisterhood Fibers, because she organized the event. It was just excellent. And, with everything, things going on with fourth waves happening everywhere, it was a bit of a... I would say that it was brave of her to keep going because, there was just news popping up before the event started, but she was so well organized there, with, lots of space in the venue, a limited amount of people at a time. There was all the protocols that were being followed, the public health protocols. And I was there sitting in the knitting circle. So there was a sisterhood circle, which was a knitting or spinning. There was spinners that were there as well. And I felt totally safe. Everybody was masked, of course, because all of the Atlantic provinces have mandatory masking back in place here. And anyway, it was just a great event. So just a shout out to Faith thank you for inviting me to attend. And it was just a great time. And it was so good to go around and see booths again, and just had that, feeling just like the old days about only there wasn't crowds. It was well spaced out and everything, but it was just a great event. There's not really anything new to talk about the PEI Fiber Festival. The committee is still in the organizing phases, so there's not much to talk about other than the date, that it'll be September 23rd, 24th, and 25th of 2022. So seeing the work that Faith did at Woolstock gave me hope that yes, there is a chance to have fiber festivals again. So there's not really much to talk about there. So I think that brings us to the in the mill section. So we're going to go to the dye room. So in our mill, we have a wet room where we do all of the washing of the fleece and we do the dyeing there. And there's lots of water that splashes around in there. So it's in a separate room from the rest of the mill. And we're going to go back there and check out some, like a quick view of what we do when we dye our yarns. If you didn't know already, we actually use Greener Shades dyes. So those Greener Shades dyes have, they give their color without having heavy metals in it. And so they're safe. It's an acid-based dye. I think I talked about this just in the last podcast as well. So acid-based means it's a very gentle acid. It's citric acid, and we use a food grade citric acid. So I wasn't sure what they use citric acid in, but there's quite a few things, like including dill pickles. So that's one of the things that I know, that the citric acid is in there. And we use a food grade citric acid to do our dyeing with the Greener Shade dyes. So anyway, we're going to pop back to the dye room and take a look about what's going on in there. Hi everyone, here we are in the mill, and this is the dyeing room and the wet room. This is Jennifer Picks.
Hi everyone.
Heard us mention about her knitting all the time. So she's dyeing up some plover today in the dye room. So she's wearing her respirator because we're dealing with dyes. So Jennifer's just weighing up the amount of dye that she needs to go into the dye vat, which we're going to show you in a few minutes when she's finished with this. And this dye solution has been mixed up at 1% depth of shade is how we call it, what it's called. And it looks quite dark, but it's going to be a beautiful light gold plover color. So here we are at the dye vat, and Jennifer's about to add the citric acid. So like I said in the introduction, we use citric acid for the mordant of the dye. And now the amount of dye stock that we measured out, or she measured out, is going into the water. And I'll show you a close-up of what that looks like inside.
I got it pretty stirred up so you can see.
Okay, so you can see that that's a fairly light shade. And sorry for the shakiness there. And she's going to bring up the basket from the dye vat, and she's going to lay in the yarn. So this is lace, so there's a lot of fine yarn in the skein. So she's just going to be really careful about the way that she lays it out in the dye vat. So she's making sure that she has everything straightened out so that it's not tangled. And she lays it out flat. And now it's not in the dye at this point, it's above the dye. Okay, so now that the yarn is all laid out there, we just put it in the water, and we make sure that there's enough water in there that the skeins can all be free floating. So this is a very light beigey kind of gold color clover. So you can see there that Jennifer just makes sure that everything is covered and coated so that it's going to be picking up the dye. Okay, so now we've just lit the burner under the dye vat, and we're going to let the yarn heat up till it's almost boiling, so it's just under the boiling point, and then we're going to come back and see what we've got when that's done. Okay, we're back, and it's been about an hour and a half or so, an hour and a half, let's say. And the vat has cooled down, and the water is clear around the yarn. So now we're going to take the yarn out, and we'll just show you how that looks. We've got a nice little lifter. Okay. And now we just have to take the water off the yarn, and we do rinsing. We rinse the skeins with cold, clear water, and when they're all rinsed, we put them in lingerie bags, and we're going to take it over to the washer. So we'll be back to see that in just a second. So this is so Jennifer's now just rinsing the skeins with cold water. You might see a little bit of steam come up, and that's just coming up from the vat because the vat underneath is still warm, but the yarn is cool and the water is cold as well. So we rinse it in pure cold water. Okay.
Great.
All right, so we'll just take these skeins, put them in a lingerie bag, just the regular kind of lingerie, and over to the washer now. It goes in there to the washer, close down the lid, and now we're just going to spin it to dry it. Okay, so the spin cycle's done. So now we're just going to take the skeins out, and Jennifer's going to put them on a hanger. And we have our rack. If you're wondering what that noise is in the background, the guy is chopping our wood today, or blocking our wood. So there you go. So that's it. So the dyeing process is done. We just hang them on the rack to dry, and when they're dry, then they'll be stained up and out on the shelf. That's it. All right. So that's kind of the mystery's been unveiled there. So if you're interested in trying dyeing yourself, we do have greener shade dye kits as well. So you have, they only make 9 colors, so you have to mix the colors yourself. So, you know, if you look at the color selection that we have, it's amazing how many colors you can make from 9 colors. In fact, you don't need 9, you need I would say the 3 colors. So either it's a blue, a yellow, and a red can make almost every color you can think of, and then there's a black that you can add. They're black. So with those 4 colors, you can do everything. But for ease of, some of the mixtures are a little bit tricky. So they've get Greener Shades has provided some other colors that are already kind of pre-mixed to give a little bit more depth to the shades and everything. And when you buy the kit, you get a small sample of all 9 colors and the instructions about how to do it. And there's a little packet of citric acid in there. So you can check that out on our website as well. So that brings us to the harmony part. So we're coming to the end. I want to talk about last episode's harmony part a little bit, because we had some questions about that. When I was recording the episode last time, I wasn't sure which harmony part I was going to use because I had 2 choices. So we took a walk along the Confederation Trail in Montague, or outside of Montague. Montague is it's a little town that's closest to where our farm is. And that has just that beautiful walking trail that you saw. And I wonder, when I was doing the editing, I didn't even know it when I was recording the podcast the last time, but there was a fish that was jumping in the podcast. So if you are in the harmony part, so if you missed the fish jumping, then you can go back to episode 80, go to the harmony part. The chapters are all there. So that's another point I should make, is that when you're watching the podcast, in the description there's all the chapters. So if you want to skip to different parts, you can use the chapters to do that. So if you want to go back to episode 80 and take a look at the harmony part, and about halfway through there is a fish jumping in the water, which I didn't see until I was editing. So when I edited the podcast, I saw that fish jumping. So check that out. And I guess, what do they call that? A little Easter egg for you to check. So now there was a couple questions about that podcast. So at the end of that, at the harmony part, I was sitting on this huge round concrete structure, and people were asking me what that was, and it was actually around now I forget what they call it, but it was a huge turntable that they used to move the engines, the train engines. So as I mentioned before, the Confederation Trail is it goes from tip to tip on the island, and it's made in the rail beds that were that were used for the railroad, for the trains that were on PEI. So we don't have trains anymore on PEI at all, but those rail beds were all turned into trails. So it's just a great project. And the Montague was literally the end of the line at that point on the province. So they had this huge big turntable that the engine would drive onto that, and then you could see in the harmony part, there's like this triangular piece in the middle of that big round circle. So the turntable was on that, and they turned it around 180 degrees, and then the train could go out the same way it came in. So that's what that round structure was. So it's still there. And there's all of the trails have interpretive boards, so that you can read about all the different things that went on, and different special things about each little place where the train station was and everything. And the old train station is still there, and it's used as there's a little restaurant in one part of it, and there's also Artisans on Main, and is a co-op, actually an artisan co-op that is also housed in that train station, the old train station that's there. So that's all about last week's Harmony part. So this week I'm going to use the other choice I had from the last episode, and we're going to take a walk in a really old cemetery. And the cemetery is about, I don't know, 7 or 8 kilometers away from our farm, maybe a little bit more than that. It's a tiny, tiny cemetery at the end of a road that ends right at the water. And it is, I didn't know when, I've talked about this before in different podcasts, we didn't know when we first moved here that our ancestors actually landed here in PEI before they went to Cape Breton. So my dad's family is from Cape Breton, Nova Scotia, but they actually started out here in PEI, which we didn't know. So it's kind of really, I mentioned that in the last podcast as well. So it's really kind of serendipity that we ended up here, and not only on PEI, but literally, I don't know, 10 to 12 kilometers away from where those ancestors actually had their farm. So this little tiny graveyard was brought to my attention by a friend who had done some genealogy, and she figured out that her ancestors and my ancestors were related. She was following a line of the McPhersons. So the gravestones that you see that we do a close-up of in this shot are McPhersons. And if you really looking, you can see that it's saying they were from NB. So as soon as you see NB around here in Atlantic Canada, you think New Brunswick. So when this friend of mine showed me these gravestones, I said, well, they're from New Brunswick. They're not. And she said, no, it's North Britain. So they were from Scotland. So it was signified as North Britain on the old gravestones. And so the way that the McPhersons and the Dohertys came together was that the gravestone that you'll see is my 5 great-grandfather, and his son had a daughter, and the daughter married a Doherty, and they went to Cape Breton in a place called Lake Ainslie in Cape Breton. So that's how they're related. And I'm obviously spring from the Doherty line after that, but that is a 5-generation great gravestone. So we were there. It was a beautiful day. We get a little bit of view of the water that's there, but there's quite a lot of trees that have grown up, and the local community maintains that gravestone. So graveyard or cemetery. And even though some of the stones had been broken and had fallen down before they started to take care of it, they've put those stones flat on the ground. You probably won't be able to see it in the recording, but it's just been beautifully and lovingly maintained. And it's just such a peaceful, quiet spot close to the water that I think it actually makes a perfect harmony moment for the harmony part. So I will say goodbye here. If you like the video, please hit subscribe. We're over 9,000 again, so we're heading towards 10,000 once again. You can select the bell so that you'll get notifications when we release a new podcast. And send your comments. I answer everyone. I just love reading the comments. And enjoy the harmony part, visiting my great-great-great-great-great-grandfather, Mr. McPherson. John, I think is his name. So here we go to the harmony part. See you next time. Bye.